Welcome to the Success Siren Salon. My name is Jasmine Srinika Crystal Singer, and I'm your host for this year-long and hopefully longer broadcast, really helping you connect to other soulpreneurs who are sharing their struggle to success stories and the wisdom that they've learned along the way through their ups and downs and through the birthing of their creative genius. We hope to inspire you as well to show up on a larger stage and share yours. So I'm extremely excited to welcome our very esteemed guest, Rebecka Eggers, midwife, Dream Midwife, to the show. And she came up with this beautiful title from her own work, which is Turn Your Brand into More Than a Business. So all the way from Mexico, connecting here over in Greece, welcome to the Success Siren Salon, Rebecka.
Thank you, Jasmine. I'm very excited to be here. And I just want to apologize to the listeners in advance. I'm struggling a little bit with my voice as I'm coming down with a bit of a respiratory infection. So I'll do my best to enunciate clearly and to keep the coughing to a minimum.
I was sniffling a little earlier on, so I think it must be something that's going around. But we're here, and again, this show exists for you. If you know you have a dream and you dream of getting paid to play and to really share your special sauce in the world, multidimensional gifts, your soul blueprint, birthing of the divine through you, you have come to the right show. And I think, Rebecka, we could start out talking a little bit about what brought you to this work, because I know many of our viewers will identify with some of those life-changing transitional calls that really had you completely shift gears into the void of unknowing and come out the other side as your own dream midwife.
Well, that's a really interesting story, Jasmine. I was working as a corporate tax lawyer when I had a vision walking through the parking lot at work that I would be a midwife to other people's dreams. And then shortly after that, I undertook a spiritual practice that was common for me at that time, which was to take the name of a specific goddess for the year with the intention of bringing that mythology and its lessons alive in my life. That next new year, I chose Mahat, and I happened to be at a resort in Tulum, Mexico, and I heard a voice say to me when I was looking in the mirror, "He is near." And I was like, well, that's weird. Hearing voices is not my bag of tricks. So I was like, okay, I just, stuck that in as a feather in my cap and went on. And at the moment that I heard that voice, I could really feel my image of myself as a woman crack for just for a split second. I could see a whole person. I was sort of free of those things that cripple us in terms of, am I pretty enough? Am I good enough? And all of a sudden it was about purpose. And then a couple days later, I walked into a bar on New Year's Eve in Tulum, and I looked across the room and my eyes met the eyes of this man who was connected with the Zapatista rebels in Chiapas. So Mahat is truth, justice, and cosmic consciousness. Hello. So that began an adventure for me that took me into the mountains of southern Mexico, looking for my authentic sense of self, because that's what I had seen in the mirror for that second, and looking for answers. That started out as a romance with a man, but it opened the door to my destiny. And eventually the tension between the two worlds that I was in, corporate America as an M&A tax director, and the sort of freedom movement that was happening in Chiapas that I was studying and connecting with, kind of tore things apart. And there ended up also, I'm going to wrap this up, but we were also going through sort of a restructuring at work, and part of my history is that my mother was murdered when I was 24, and that was an extremely traumatic experience for me. Obviously, not just because I lost my mother, but because we had a police detective that he kind of had a reputation for figuring out who he thought did things and then making that stick. And so not only did we lose our mother, but then we were suddenly thrust into this police investigation. So when that happened at work, probably, normal to go through sort of a restructuring of your department is stressful, but it started to feel for me like the police investigation, and I couldn't tell who to trust and who not to trust. And so all of the trauma that I had buried as I was, a young mother and building my career and whatever just exploded. So all of these things kind of came together in the perfect storm, and my life just blew apart. And when that happened, thankfully, I had had a successful, lucrative career up until now. So I had some backup financially, and I ended up moving to Chiapas and starting the Passion Path, which is my business. Took me a while to fully embrace being the Dream Midwife. But that's where I am today, and that's the work that I do from start to finish, healing trauma with people all the way through bringing their brand through as one of the myths of victory for this moment in history. So there's always sort of a political activist bent to my work, even, and also a spiritual side to it. So I hope that answered your question.
Oh, totally. And I think a lot of the soulpreneurs who are tuning in are just so grateful for your authentic and vulnerable share, really sharing how it's not usually a whim that thrusts us into the place of making that choice to embrace our highest destiny. Oftentimes, as you know, as you teach the hero's path as well, we deny the call. We pretend we haven't heard the call, and life will set certain events in motion that will wake us up, whether it's in a pleasant way or in a very shocking way. So what a testament to your insight to trust your intuition and know that this breaking down was really a breakthrough, a breaking open and a breaking apart into a higher sense of self and destiny, really aligning with your own soul's mission. In that time, what were the things that kept you sane amidst crazy chaos and fluctuation so that you could begin to really tune out the dissonance and tune into that wisdom that was being channeled through, so that you could turn up the volume on your higher self?
Well, that's sort of a funny story. When I started out, I thought I was going to call my business Abundance Full of Grace. I actually, if you could see my altar, which is protected by the screen behind me, you would see that I had a hand-painted sign made in Spanish for Abundance Full of Grace. And then I quickly realized I didn't really know anything about abundance or grace. So I'd love to tell you that God sustained me and my faith sustained me, but what really sustained me and anchored me at that time was the financial resources that I had to support me through that moment, which actually doesn't have much to do with abundance. Creating abundance or creating wealth for me within the system that I was working in wasn't a hard thing. So that didn't come necessarily from having strong principles of abundance. It happened that I was highly educated in a field that paid really well. So the money sustained me, and I finally got the help that I needed. I mean, one of the things that I often tell the story about is that I had disability insurance, but in order to take advantage of the disability insurance, I had to sit down and kind of lawyer what was wrong with me. So I sat down and I looked at it in this very objective way, because I really didn't want to believe that I was that, my mind is what I had always relied on. And when trauma erupts, you lose the ability to really rely on your mind in that way. So as I sat down and made the case for why I needed the disability coverage, I had this moment where I was like, and excuse my language, but this is exactly what I said to myself: holy shit, I think I'm not okay. And then because the disability coverage was contingent on having therapy, and then I went the other way. I had two therapists when I was still in the United States, and then when I moved on to Chiapas, I had a local therapist in Chiapas who was helped me quite a bit. But really, along the way, I found that nobody really understood trauma in the way that it needed to be understood in order for real healing to happen. The therapist could only do so much, in other words.
And this is an integral part of what you share with clients who, we touched on this before the show, when we were in the green room, was really this feeling of the clients trying to make a breakthrough, but they're still invisible. Can you speak to how trauma shuts down the ability to be truly visible and to feel safe in your authentic, raw vulnerability?
Sure. So I've created this program called Dream Alchemy, the Revelation Story, and it's a mythology that you can step into and go through it's 7 doorways long. You go through the experience of touching the opening word, which the opening word is obscure. And the journey starts with imagery that my artist and I made, and we took an image of me and we covered my face with the mask of trauma. And as you go through the first couple of doorways, the mask of trauma cracks and falls off, and suddenly you can see clearly your image. So I say that to introduce the idea that the core wound of trauma is actually not seen. We're not seen when we're in trauma by the person who's inflicting it on us, because that's the nature of trauma. Inflicting trauma on someone is that you dehumanize them and you don't see them and you don't acknowledge them as a person. So then you learn not to see yourself clearly, so you see yourself through the lens of trauma. You're also not seen when you're hiding from or being hidden from trauma. So those are your coping mechanisms that you use to really become invisible to the trauma itself as often as possible. So I have something called the Trauma Alchemy Quiz, which tells you what your primary trauma coping strategy is and how it materializes and how you can begin to normalize it. But the real thrust of the Trauma Alchemy Quiz is that there are 4 primary ways that you mask in trauma. So once you're in the coping strategies, those coping strategies become the mask of your life, and they're the thing that hides your true essence, really from even you, or maybe even especially from you, because a lot of what happens in trauma is that we break off a part of our soul, that, our essence, that we blame for what happened to us, and we sort of like, that's not me. I mean, that's sort of classic dissociation. That's not me. That didn't happen to me. That happened to this other part of me. And, we leave behind essential parts of us in the trauma. And so part of destroying the trauma mask and revealing your true essence is what I do in the second doorway of Dream Alchemy, which is deep soul retrieval work. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, denial really deadens our ability to show up as that divine spark. And it takes a delicate touch to be able to mirror back to the individual what the benefit would be to stand naked and exposed in the face of that pain of being dismembered almost, but not even knowing that we're in such deep spiritual pain. So that work is a prerequisite to the foundational approach of blossoming into who we were meant to be. I think that you've created a remarkable and totally unique sacred channel and cauldron for people to go into and find wholeness again. Because when we speak from wholeness, it's our energy, it's our vibration that our clients want. They're actually paying for the energetic exchange. They're paying for how they feel, what shifts for them, what they can achieve, but it's emotion based. It's all about how they feel in response to your vibration. So with some of my clients who have suffered trauma, I have to concur. It is impossible to be truly visible because of the self-protective mechanism to protect you from more harm or trauma, and visibility triggers triggers that part of our brain, which is fight and flight. So all of us have to some degree anxiety around public speaking or fear about being persecuted. But for the person who's undergone deep trauma, it is almost a fear of loss of self once more. So what would you counsel your clients who are going through this process, who feel just so frightened, as if they can't move forward, as if they're almost paralyzed, and they want to remain curled up in hiding, and they want to remain invisible, that one part of themselves?
Well, I think the main thing is that at the outset of the program, the first sacrifice that you make, because it's a ritually based program, is to sacrifice your hunger to be seen, which seems counterintuitive, but it's not, because you know, you're always struggling because that need was never met to be seen, but that in and of itself becomes part of the mask so that you're not seen for who you truly are. And along with that goes a vow to work in secret. So for the period of time when the restoration is happening, and you know, there's several layers to the restoration. There's not just the removal of the mask, but there's the revision of the relationship with divinity, because that happens in the third doorway. Because most people who've been traumatized, or many people who've been traumatized, also have been traumatized in relation to spirituality. So we address that in the third doorway. And then there's an integration of something new in the fourth doorway, which is the integration of positive, I would say positive orientation, not positive thinking. Many people have had experiences with positive thinking that only deepened their trauma. Positive orientation is actually about learning to integrate the positive into your life, because a lot of trauma survivors have a hard time actually integrating a sense of what's going right. In other words, there's a hypervigilant focus on what's going wrong, an attempt to avoid the next shoe falling. And you know, it goes on from there. So you don't have the visibility happen until the seventh doorway, which is then a transition into resonance-based visibility. So I would say that, you know, the transformation within is happening before the visibility piece, which if I look back, is actually what happened to me, because you've known me for a long time, and that I've struggled with visibility, and that it was never the right time and never the right circumstance, and something was always holding me back. And I think it was that I wasn't ready yet to build visibility based on resonance, that I still had too much inner remaking to be done. It took me, you know, 7 years to get to the point where I'm really ready for that visibility. And I still don't want like Oprah visibility. I want like enough visibility to do the work with the people I'm meant to work with, but I still don't want to be unmasked and out there on a huge scale, even after all the work that I've done. So I guess to answer your question, the real protection that comes into play is to stop trying to be seen, and to make a safe, secluded place for you to work through the mask, and to have your sort of inner coming out before you have your outer coming out.
Absolutely, because we can only shine to the degree in which I feel we've healed. And otherwise, it is the false mask or the false show. We attract our clients through our truth, through our sad moments, our anger, our chaos, our frustration, through truly showing up as we are, and creating that human heart connection, which is a bridge that allows them to do the work that they need to do. We're here in service and support to them as soulpreneurs. A question that I had, that I think is a really foundational piece, is for clients who have undergone trauma and have lost a sense of trust and faith. We talked about disconnection from the divine, but if this awful thing happened to me, without really sinking deep into victimhood, but really this question: how can there be the divine, or how can the divine be, quote unquote, supporting me at all times if this awful thing happened to me? And you know, in conjunction to that, how can I be worthwhile, or how can I be worthy if this happened to me? Meaning, if I were a better person, then the divine would have supported me more. This is kind of some of the inner dialogue, which is with clients who have really experienced a lot of deep trauma. This has had them put one foot on the gas and one foot on the brakes continuously. It is the need to preserve themselves, and the survival instinct, and the distrust, because they're always, as you said, hypervigilant. And there is also the desire to move forward, to heal, to integrate, to break out in wholeness. So what would you suggest to help propel them to that next echelon of healing?
Well, I think I would just start with my own story around that. I mean, the sixth doorway of dream alchemy is the distillation of the experience. So this is where your trauma becomes your writing partner, because the sixth doorway is the telling. It's the creation of a myth that becomes your brand story, because most of my clients are, in the business of transformation on some level or another. So the distillation of the experience becomes the telling, the creation of a myth that others can then step into to achieve their own transformation. And that becomes a journey that they can offer through their soul work that they're offering to the world. But in terms of my story, I had this remarkable experience when I was young. I don't know, 11, 12, 13. It sort of all blends together. But I was raised in the evangelical church, and this minister came, and he had this altar call, and I don't remember what the altar call was at all. And he touched me on the forehead, and I remember losing consciousness, what they call in the evangelical church, slain in the spirit, which just means that you've been touched by someone who's so connected to divinity that the divine touch transfers to you. And right before I lost consciousness, I just remember him saying that I was going to be a mighty witness for God. Now, maybe he said that to like every young person he touched on the head, who knows what his deal was. But I think that went into my consciousness, or it was already in my consciousness, and he witnessed it. And shortly after that, I got pulled into, the world of sort of sexual abuse and drug addiction and all of those kinds of things. And I've come to see those moments as having been essential to what I do now. So I'm not going to say that we should go out and find trauma and get into it so that we can find our destiny. What I would say is that trauma happens. It's like a natural part of life. It happens almost to everyone universally in the system that we're living in, which I call a trauma system. So the trauma that happens to you can become the fodder of destiny. It can become, there's two tracks. There's the track of fate, which is where what happened to you sort of controls your response to the world. That's when the mask is on. But when the mask comes off, you can move to the track of destiny, where what happened to you becomes the foundation of what you're creating in the world, of the destiny that you're fulfilling. Trauma was integral to me being the dream midwife. When I started down this path, I cut the cords of everything that was inconsistent with the realization of my dream of becoming the dream midwife. And what emerged from that was the truth that the very thing that was holding me back from getting out of the track I was on was also the thing that was going to be an integral part of doing the work that I'm doing now. And rather than being freed from my trauma, I was taken more deeply into it in like minute detail. I mean, I moved to a place that you could almost call domination central, where trauma walks on the street next to you. The children are enslaved in selling, trinkets on the streets, sometimes as young as 3. I don't even understand how they can count well enough to make change, but they do. And so trauma was all around me, and it became something that I walked with. Trauma was my companion, and now pleasure is my new companion, and I'm learning and teaching the ways of pleasure. But I had to go very deep into that world of trauma and understand it in minute detail so that I could translate the solutions for people who weren't being helped by therapy and who couldn't fulfill their dreams and their destinies because they were wearing the trauma mask and they were being held back by the coping strategies that make up the mask.
Beautiful. And again, the name of your program, you have a couple of different ways in which viewers, soulpreneurs who are listening to this amazing story of unfolding, of coming of age. It's an incredible coming of age story. But the coming of age of the soul, when it is, fully aligned in its mission, and when it has really stepped into the sunlight, and it becomes the beacon of light to inspire the hearts of many. Such a beautiful, beautiful personal tale of struggle to success, Rebecka. How, if viewers and soulpreneurs who want to learn more, they want to go deeper, they're willing to do this incredibly rewarding work of synthesis and make the sacrifice that I think we really should not sugarcoat. Life will test us. It will bring us allies. It will bring us obstacles. And in this archetypal journey, really, it's up to us to decide what we choose to focus on, but also make the tough choices, the intuitively aligned choices on, as you so aptly said, which cords to cut. So if you are not reaching your goals, if you're feeling drained, if you're feeling there's always something simmering under the surface that you've been suppressing, creating sacred space, creating safe space, becoming part of an alchemical cauldron that will allow you to transmute that, the fear into love and the lead into your gold, your wounds into your wisdom, which is really your wealth as a soulpreneur when you share this. Rebecka, how can soulpreneurs work more deeply with you and find out more about the benefits of those sacrifices, of those hard choices, and the joy, the pleasure, and the rewards that are inherent in the integration?
Well, there's several paths into my work. There's sort of an inner core of my work, which is individual session work, and I can only take so many people for that. So I only have a few slots available at any given time. But in that inner core, there's my flair brand storytelling work, where we actually just get into the work of creating the business, and through that process, unresolved things come up and they get resolved as we create the business. In that work, I do everything with you. I help you choose a platform. I train you on how to use the platform. There's 2 platforms that I offer. I don't need to go into that right now. It's fully integrated. By the time we're finished, you have your email system set up, you have your funnel set up, you have your brand story told, you have a journey created that you can offer to other people, and you have a website. And through that process, we're also doing very deep healing work. So it takes about a year. I also have my Passion Path journey work, which is just really basic soul retrieval and cord cutting work on occasion. So we really get into, when the trauma is so present that it's not yet time to create from it, we do the soul retrieval work that lays the foundation for that. So that's the very inner core when you have my individual attention. I also have a next ring out, which is my Dream Alchemy program. I'm currently revamping that from self-study to actually be a group journey where there are weekly calls and events and some ritual work that we do together to supplement the work that's already in the program, because self-study becomes like a gym membership, as I learned the hard way. So people don't necessarily even ever start the work. So the road into the Dream Alchemy program it has a prerequisite, which is called Dream Conception. It's a mini journey that's 4 modules long. And in that, we confront aborted and miscarried dreams. We work through womb liberation, because for women, historically, if you look at how the womb was sort of taken over under patriarchal Roman mythology with the Vestal Virgins and what have you, the womb is not necessarily free. We confront the journey threshold, which is really coming to terms with carrying a dream at this moment in history, which is terrifying for so many people. It's traumatic for so many people, so we address that head on, and then there is a commitment ceremony. So the next ring out is the stuff that I offer for free, and there's quite a bit of that. So I do my Resurrection Diaries, which are articles that I write, and you can subscribe to that. And there are a couple books you can get for free when you subscribe to the Resurrection Diaries. There's a Glory Overflowing prayer series that you can get, and there's the Shaman's Touch, which is working with the transforming fire of destiny. I have my Dreamer's Oracle and my Thriving in the Age of Madness broadcasts, which are now actually linked up so that I do the Dreamer's Oracle. I look at the astrology through Egyptian mythology on the full new moon and the full moon every month, and then there's a corresponding broadcast. And to get connected to that broadcast, you join the Dreamers Passion Path Facebook group, where that broadcast happens now, but every couple of weeks. With the change of the moon and with the astrological forecast. So I think that's everything.
It is really a really complete pantheon. So wherever people feel called to join the path or dabble with it or dive in and have a bit of a taster, I just wanted to mention, I love the name, Thriving in the Age of Madness. And I can't think of a better guide. So if you're looking to experience Rebecka in all of her glory and wisdom as she channels it like it is, you have to join her incredible group. So again, all of the links to Rebecka and her offerings and how you can connect with her will be in the show notes underneath this video. Again, so many fabulous free resources, a dive right into the smorgasbord of self-healing, so you can transmute your wounds into wisdom and turn that wisdom into the wealth that allows you to truly turn fate into destiny, which has been the beautiful alchemical archetypal journey we have been on in this session of the Success Siren Salon. So again, thanking Dream Midwife Rebecka Eggers. This again has been the episode, Turn Your Brand into More Than a Business. And again, wishing all of you soulpreneurs to subscribe if you love this content and share it. This channel is for you, to inspire you to your scintillating success. So again, this is Jasmine Srinaga, Crystal Singer, inviting you to connect, captivate, and contribute. Bye for now.